Hi, I'm Alex and this is Asa. I run the British Bird of Prey Centre here in the National Botanical Gardens. I've come to tell you a little bit about falconry. Falconry is essentially going out and catching your dinner using a bird of prey. This is a prime example of the most common birds of prey used throughout history and today for going out and hunting. This is a female goshawk. They've got a few names throughout history, so they have been known as a cook's hawk or a goose hawk. So this is what people would have used primarily just because they're such a versatile and efficient hunter. Falconry goes back as far as the history books. There is evidence that even the Egyptians kept birds of prey. I don't believe there's evidence that they used them for hunting, but they definitely kept all different birds of prey. In more recent history, so ancient English history or British history, we definitely have records of people hunting with every species of bird and trading with other countries with their birds as well. So it was a long time ago we had more than just our native birds in the UK being used for hunting. Different birds had different values, mainly based on their hunting ability. So goshawks were highly prized, but also the large falcons like peregrines and gyrfalcons were worth more than their weight in gold. And the crimes for having a bird you shouldn't have or stealing someone's bird were really, really severe. So the expression to have your pound of flesh from someone comes from falconry. If you stole someone's bird, the punishment was for that bird to eat a pound of your flesh. So quite gruesome and horrible, but it probably put a lot of people off from stealing birds that they shouldn't have had. Throughout history, what bird you were allowed depended on your status. So someone like a king would have been allowed to have the very large, like the gyrfalcons and the golden eagles. If you were a noble lady, you would have been given a merlin, so that's the UK's smallest falcon. Because it's so small, it's not overly useful for falconry, so it's not going to put much food on the table. But it is a small, delicate, lady-sized bird, and it flies very sort of enthusiastically, and it's very entertaining. So ladies would have gone out and flown them just for fun, mainly hunting larks. Once you, as a lady, once you are promised to be married to somebody, you're not going to have time for your falcon. You would hand it over to one of your friends, normally one of your bridesmaids at your wedding, and that's what your bouquet represents. When you throw your bouquet over your shoulder, you're giving away your merlin. If you come down to then small sort of noble boys, they would have had other little falcons, so hobbies. I know certain sort of squires and princes would have had hobbies when they were very young. The more common man would have had the kestrel. Bishops and priests would have had falcons. Most churches and chapels would have had a bird of prey of some description. There's lots of terms that are used on and off today in everyday conversation that come from falconry. For example, to control someone, to have them under the thumb. If you look at her equipment, it comes underneath my thumb, so I'm holding on to that. She's under my thumb, which means I've got control of her. She's also wrapped around my little finger, so that's where that comes from. This is one of the examples of a lure used for falconry. So it is a handle with a piece of string, and on the end of the string is whatever you want the bird to look for when you're taking it out hunting. So if you keep in mind, this is a method for teaching a bird what to hunt. For a goshawk, you might use a variety of lures to teach it to look for a variety of different shapes and colours. A lure can come in almost any form. In this case, it's just some black rubber, so it roughly mimics a crow. I could make that more realistic by actually tying a pair of crow wings to it. You can also tie sort of pheasant wings to it, or any bird wings, depending on what you want to hunt, really. Also, you could make up a lure out of a rabbit skin if you want the bird to hunt rabbits. So you make a sort of sausage shape, cover it in rabbit fur, and teach the bird that that's what they've got to look for. Now, initially, the bird knows that that is not real. So in early training, you would get your realistic looking lure, tie a piece of meat to it, and literally ask the bird to just walk over to it and eat. Once it's eaten from the lure, it starts to recognise the the shape and size of what it's looking for and understands that having that means it gets fed, and it's only a short step to actually chasing the real thing. Once you've got the bird understanding what to look for, it is a case of building a little bit of fitness, building some trust between you and the bird so it wants to come back when you call it, and just go out and look for the rabbit or duck or whatever it is you want to hunt, and hope that the bird is keen enough and understands enough that it wants to chase it and catch it for you. Different birds require different size gloves. So at the moment I'm wearing a glove with 2 layers of leather. You can just see the seam there. So that means that my thumb and top 3 fingers are more protected than the bottom bit. Where the bird sits has got the most leather on it. If you compare that to this, quite hefty, massive, heavy glove. So this would be used for an eagle. It's got 4 layers of leather, just because of the extra power of a larger bird. And on the other side of that, if I was flying a little Merlin falcon, you can actually get just one little piece of leather that slides over your finger, so it can perch just on the end of your finger. So it's mainly to stop scratches and things like that, rather than actually stop the bird from trying to dig its talons into your arm. These days, falconry is still a widely practiced sport or hobby. So it is done more now for, one reason is just being able to be close to the birds. A lot of people just like being able to be this close to something that is still technically a wild animal. Then the hunting side of it, to watch 2 natural predator and prey relationship, to watch that unfold and watch an actual hunt is quite exciting. So a lot of people do it just for the excitement of watching that. Anyone looking at getting involved in falconry themselves have to consider how much time they have free to put into it. It's very time consuming, and not only short term is it time consuming because you've got to train and fly the bird. Asa here might live till she's 30 years old. There are courses you can do to learn how to look after them, and lots of books to read. Like I said, the basics of falconry is not complicated. It's quite a simple, straightforward process for how to train and fly a bird. The harder thing is to get your head around what the bird's thinking and what the bird needs from you to be able to do it well, which generally most people try and find someone who has been doing it for years, that they can sort of ask lots of questions, follow them and learn from them rather than just from books. Current falconry equipment, it's actually called furniture, so hawk furniture, is generally the same. There's a couple of variants that people use, but generally it's the same across the board. So you can see she's wearing a bell. Some people might have 2 bells or a bell on each leg. It's completely up to you. You don't have to use a bell, but it is very helpful if your bird goes into a tree or dives into the undergrowth. That bell is often the only reason you can find it. That is held on by a very small piece of leather with a few holes in it that allow you to loop the leather in and around itself. That's called a bewit, B-E-W-I-T. Under that is 2 leather anklets, so just like a bracelet, held together with an eyelet. If you can just see that there. Simple piece of leather. Again, you can get very elaborate ones with padding on the inside. You can get them stitched for extra strength, but they're all effectively the same. And then attached to that are 2 pieces of equipment. So this is a jess. So she has a pair of jesses on, So these are flying jesses, which means these can be on her when she is flying. These are safe for her to fly with because they haven't got any holes in. So anything with holes in could catch on a branch or a twig, a piece of barbed wire, whatever, and get her stuck. So she's safe to fly with those. This Dacron is 2 more jesses, but these are called muse jesses, and these have got holes in so I can attach this swivel in the middle. Attached to the swivel is a leash so that I can tie her to my glove. So in history, if you go back far enough, they wouldn't have had the swivel, and all of this would have been made out of leather because that's what they had at the time. As things have moved on, obviously we're using better materials which are safer for the bird. So if you tied her up to a perch with a piece of leather, the problem with leather is you don't know when it's going to break. So these look nice and strong, but if I'm holding on to them and maybe a few months old and she tries to fly away, they could just snap. So if she gets away with Muse jesses on and a swivel, if I had a leather leash these days, then that's quite dangerous for her because she can get tangled up in things. So it's important not to fly the bird with more equipment on than you need. You can't see it, but she's also wearing a little backpack. So she's got a little plastic plate in between her shoulder blades, and the ribbon goes across her shoulders, crosses the chest, the same as you'd wear a rucksack. And that means that we can attach a radio transmitter to her back when she flies, so that if she flies away, we can find her again. You may see in other falconry centres or other people flying birds that they have a similar setup on the base of the tail. So you put a little plastic plate on the base of the tail, and that's what they'll attach the radio tracker to. Again, there's pros and cons to all of the different options for where you put equipment, and it comes down to personal preference really.